Hello everybody, this is Ahmed here with a very special video log, basically inspired by my pals over at Project COE, Jarrod and Steven. This is going to be about my top 10 games of this generation. Yeah, it's a list vlog. Basically what I mean by this generation, it's going to include everything from the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and the Wii, and I'm going to include the handhelds, which are the DS and the PSP, as special mentions on the side, basically. They are worthy of my list, the DS and the PSP, but at the same time, I don't want to clutter the list with too much of the same genre. I try to include a variety of things. And the other thing is, these games that I'm going to mention are basically my personal experience or journey through this generation. As you know, all know, lists of various kinds, they're biased and opinionated depending on the gamer. And you're going to know my pattern from the list I'm going to mention here of what kind of games I gravitate toward, to what type of platforms that I played on the most. It depends from game to game, because not all video gamers or game fans have played everything, and I'm sure there are a lot of lists or games that are in other people's lists, like in Jarrod and Stevens, that I've definitely skipped over, and I think if I play those in the near future, my lists would definitely change, but I'm not really sure if I could actually get to those. So as of this date and this upload date, these are my top 10 games of this generation, and I just hope you enjoy them. Number 10 goes to Super Smash Bros. Brawl for the Wii. And say what you will, when Smash Brothers Brawl first came out, I've been looking forward to it for years, basically, ever since Smash Brothers Melee, which was released in 2001. This series, as you all know, it's a brawler or a fighter. Not a lot of people call it a fighter because it's doesn't have the technicalities of performing moves like the Hadouken and the quarter circle and the half circle. But however, it does have its own intricacies, and what Sakurai did with the series is very special in the sense that it casualized, or not casualized, made fighters more simple, with simple inputs like towards A and up B, down B, but you can chain link them together in your own case and to perform combos and whatnot. So Smash Brothers Brawl, there's a lot of talk on the internet that it's not as good as Melee because it's not as technical as Melee. There are a lot of things in Smash Brothers Melee for the GameCube that avid fighters or hardcore fans got in terms of fast-paced, action-style, combo-based fighters. But in the same, so Brawl sort of steered away from that, kind of gravitate toward the party people or the guys who just want to have fun instead of taking it a bit seriously. In my case, I'm not a pro in Smash Brothers Melee, but at the same time, I do understand where they're coming from, and I recently watched the documentary called The Smash Brothers. Definitely a must watch for everybody who likes Nintendo and likes the hardcore scene and whatnot, even for casual fans. It gets you more towards the mood of understanding where they're coming from in terms of Smash Brothers Melee compared to Brawl. Nonetheless, this didn't matter to me much because Brawl, I've devoted a lot of time into with my friends, not just with my friends, also by myself. The single player was very extensive, especially the Subspace Emissary. Mr. Sakurai did a lot of things that are usually not seen in Nintendo games, like trying to tell a story, making FMV cinematics, crossing over all these characters into one world. So it was a very nice fan service-esque thing. Another thing that was really enjoyable with Brawl is the huge roster of characters. Any Nintendo fan would definitely feel at home with this big roster. From King DDD to the obscure like guys from Fire Emblem like Ike. There are a lot of cool. There's also as well Ness and Lucas. Lucas is not known in the Western country and in the English-speaking country because he's from a game that hasn't been released. So it's cool that they're putting these characters in. So in terms of single player and multiplayer, I've definitely devoted a lot of time into the game. Yes, I do feel that it's not as competitive as Melee, even though I'm not a pro fan. I always felt with Smash Brothers Melee that it's a competitive game. I want to play without items. I want to play one-on-one. With Brawl, not so much. It's more of I'm leaning toward having fun with friends, and even if I lost, I didn't feel salty, as as the hardcore fans can call this feeling of saltiness. At the same time, another thing that brought what made Brawl special to me is there's a nice case of longevity from the fans' perspective. A lot of fans have been putting mods in Brawl that don't, or hacks as they call them. They don't. You could play them from a Wii directly. Very easy to do. Doesn't need any pirating or copying or hardware chips and whatnot. It only needs certain software and an SD card. And these hacks sort of extended the replayability of the game. I always like to try these new things like was the first one I tried was Brawl Plus, and then I went to Balance Brawl, and there's another one that's actually coming out soon is Project M, which is like it was going to make Brawl more like Melee and add new features in that you wouldn't expect, like new characters and whatnot. So yeah, Smash Brothers Brawl, for all intents and purposes, it really well deserved. It met with the hype quite well, and even though it didn't gravitate towards hardcore fans, it's still a good game, bug free, very solid, has a lot of stuff that you want to do, a lot of unlockables. So really cool game all around, and it definitely deserved my number 10 pick. Number 9 goes to Call of Duty Black Ops, but I do want to give special thanks to Modern Warfare 2. Uh, yeah, I know it's a kind of a really strange entry in the list, but at the same time, hear me out. I've never been a first-person shooter fan. I'm not a hardcore fan towards first-person shooters, unless it has a really cool multiplayer or local multiplayer aspect to it. I used to play GoldenEye, I used to play Perfect Dark, and I really got into Perfect Dark Zero with my friends in terms of local play, simultaneous local and online play. So when it has, the more features the game have in terms of multiplayer, the more I'm interested in them. Another thing I wasn't a big fan of initially was getting to Xbox Live Arcade, chatting with friends online, the competitiveness of online play. I've never been into it much, I just like to go online, just play the game and opt out. But Modern Warfare 2 hit me with this certain bug it had. It gave me a bug in terms of first-person shooters that has progressive type features or RPG elements in online multiplayer. I do love my RPGs, so I as soon as they had this RPG type system in which the more you kill or the more points you get, the more unlockables you obtain, the more guns and attachments and perks, the more RPG stuff it had, the more I felt that, wow, it's really cool and really addictive. And Modern Warfare 2 was the first game that actually got me into that addictiveness nature. Ever since then, I usually like trying first-person shooters for the multiplayer perspective, like Battlefield and whatnot. But the reason Battlefield is not I do love Battlefield, by the way. I don't want to put my preferences for one over the other. But the reason I didn't put Battlefield and I put Black Ops also as well instead of Battlefield and Modern Warfare 2, because Black Ops was the game I found myself getting back to the most. Modern Warfare 2 was plagued with a lot of bugs and a lot of glitches toward the end of the cycle due to certain people getting to hack the game. So there's a lot of hacks in the game that the Modern Warfare 2 was no longer enjoyable in the long run. Black Ops on the other hand, it was I found myself going back to it every time with new maps, new downloadable content. I always found myself loving to play Black Ops. Even when Black Ops 2 was out, I didn't really get into Black Ops too much. It's a good game, don't get me wrong, but for some reason, the Black Ops has the best of all worlds, basically, in terms of Call of Duty games. It has the best maps, the most balanced maps, and they usually like opting in for balances with guns and whatnot. And at the same time, it had the original setting. Modern Warfare 2 was this gritty war setting, the modern setting that a lot of shooters got into in the recent years. Black Ops was sort of right down the middle. It didn't have that modern setting. It was set toward the Cold War, 1970s, 1980s, but in the same time had some really interesting, cool weapons. It seemed like a game more than taking it seriously as a gritty, realistic type thing. So, but definitely Black Ops, because the amount of hours I spent into it and it got me into the whole online multiplayer culture. Even though Battlefield, in a lot of ways, is a really different and cooler experience because it has bigger maps and more strategic play. But Black Ops and the Modern Warfare games are the ones that got me into the addictiveness and competitiveness of online multiplayer. So definitely huge props and credits for Black Ops especially, and hope you enjoyed number 9 here. Number 8 goes to Braid, a downloadable indie title for the Xbox Live Arcade originally, which was eventually released for the PlayStation 3. Now, this pick was really difficult for me to make because I had a couple of other indie titles or downloadable titles that I've been contemplating on. I didn't know which to put for this spot. I'll tell you why, the reason why I have Braid in. But before that, let me give special mention and special thanks to these the following downloadable titles: Portal, which is originally for the Orange Box, but it's also available for download for the Xbox Live Arcade. Super Meat Boy, again for the Xbox Live Arcade. And finally, Limbo, again originally for the Xbox Live Arcade, eventually released for other consoles. Now, why these 3 games in particular? First off, Portal, because it had it had the best of all worlds. It wasn't like an indie title per se, because it used a really advanced engine. It had a nice physics engine to it, and obviously everybody loves GLaDOS, and that was the main highlight for this game. Basically, the humor that GLaDOS has in her dialogue, the computer. So what made me want to play Portal, not only it had a really nice first-person puzzle-based aspect, it was very different from other FPS titles at the time. All the FPS titles had shooting involved and violence and killing, but Portal was more gravitating toward puzzles or trying to navigate your first-person environment or the 3D environment in general. So that got me into it. But if GLaDOS wasn't around talking in the game, I wouldn't have finished it. Definitely, I finished it like in one sitting. I remember for 5-6 hours. I was really engrossed because I really wanted to know what GLaDOS is going to say next and where the story is going to. There are a lot of visual cues in the game as well. You'll find like certain rooms that have stuff written. Everybody knows this, the infamous "the cake is a lie." Basically the internet spoiled the meme for me. I didn't know what it meant in general. I sort of avoided that until the end, until I played it. But when I first saw that written inside a certain room, I was really, intrigued what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen. So, obviously Portal 2 is out and it's a sequel, but I didn't find myself playing it as much. Portal 1 definitely is the better game for me because it's the originator in my opinion. Super Meat Boy is a special thanks. The reason why is because it sort of changed my outlook to indie titles in general. It was the first indie title that I was really looking forward to, and I devoted some time to. I didn't finish it. That's why I didn't include it here in the top 8. And the reason why I didn't find myself playing it because it was too difficult for me. It got to a certain point where it got a bit too hectic for me. But in terms of 2D platforms, it's one of the best of this generation. But definitely one of the best. Gives Mario, gives Rayman a run for their money because of the really charming production values, very tight controls, and a lot of replayability towards it, especially with the Steam version, which has a lot of user-generated levels. I did play the Xbox Live version, by the way. And the final thing was Limbo. Limbo was an amazing, engrossing 2D puzzler. It had a very unique look to it, the black and white stylized look, and it was really vague, dark, and edgy. Didn't know what the storyline was in general, but it did have something interesting going on. It's not too deep, but it does put you in for a shock in the end of the game. It's like, what the heck is going on? But you're not playing it for story. I was basically playing it for the puzzles. The puzzles were really interesting and kind of difficult, very mind-bending, scratching puzzles. So let's get back to Limbo. The reason why let's get back to Braid. The reason why I included Braid over these titles, even though I played Braid later, I played Braid later than all of these titles combined, was because it really struck a nerve with me. I don't know what it was with Braid. It's like the mixture of the artistic visuals with the really nice violin-based music. And not just that, I was really surprised by the plot, the story. There was no voice acting. It was very vague. It gave you with each chapter, it gives you like certain hints. It gives you like books or but it starts off with a very typical cliche plot of you trying to save the princess. And that turns into when it got towards the end. I don't want to spoil everything for anybody, but that ending chapter, I was completely flipped. I was like, what the heck is going on? It's really memorable. I would never forget this game for the rest of my time because of that end chapter, especially once you finish the game and then it gives you more dialogue. It's all really strange, deep but vague. I don't know how to explain it because once you finish up all the reading, and that twist just suddenly gets thrown into you, you don't know what to do. Like you start thinking, okay, what are they talking about? What's going on exactly? Nothing is as it seems. And then when you go online and look for braid analysis, you get shocked. I was shocked by the amount of theories and how it made sense when these people were talking about. Basically, you're not gonna get it, but it's sort of they liken Tim to a scientist and this princess as the atomic bomb, and basically Tim was trying to stop the atomic bomb or trying to create it, or it was really, the analysis was very interesting. I don't want to spoil more than that, and you're never gonna get these things when you're reading. I didn't spoil anything from the end title, by the way. None of the stuff that I'm saying right now is spoilers for the end, because the game doesn't hint to any of these except just a bit of dialogue here and there. So it's really awesome. I highly suggest anybody who is everybody to play Braid, not just because of the nice puzzle gameplay, the 2D head scratching gameplay. Obviously, I was stumped in a couple of areas in the game. I had to look up because I was I wanted to finish it like in 1 or 2 sittings because I was looking forward to what's going to happen next. And the end chapter. The end chapter is one of the best, most engrossing experiences that I'll never forget. So, Braid, number 8. Number 7 goes to Mortal Kombat, the reboot, for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and eventually for the PC as well. And PlayStation Vita as well has the game. So the reason why I picked Mortal Kombat, again, this was another game that I sort of, another placement that I sort of struggled to place because there were a couple of fighters that I had in mind. One special mention before I talk about Mortal Kombat more, I'll have to say Super Street Fighter 4 or Street Fighter 4 and its various iterations for this generation, because this is the sole game that was responsible for reviving fighters back from the dead. If Street Fighter 4 was not revived, you wouldn't see the other games like Mortal Kombat and whatnot, all these revived titles. And these indie games as well, these indie fighters like Skullgirls and whatnot. So Street Fighter 4, definitely that game got me back into fighters too. I cut fighters from Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat originally for the Super Nintendo. I didn't play anything ever since. Skipped Street Fighter 3, skipped everything else. Played a bit of EX, but I didn't get into it as much, Street Fighter EX. So Street Fighter 4 got me full force back into fighters. Ever since I played Street Fighter 4, I wanted to play other fighters into the mix. But the reason why I didn't include it as number 7 or in my top 10 in general is because if you look at Street Fighter 4, basically it didn't do much. Obviously, it revived back some characters. It got back the tight gameplay. But if you look back in the whole series in general, you don't see a big evolution or a big jump in terms of gameplay mechanics, in terms of certain moves, certain movesets. There's not this big jump. All it did was revive it back in 3D graphics form and tweak it. So it's basically a big tweak or big remake of Street Fighter 2 and 3 combined into one. So it didn't do anything original per se. So that's why Street Fighter 4 didn't get the pick for number 7. But the reason why I put Mortal Kombat in is because it's the first fighter I've ever played that had an amazing and hooking single-player storyline campaign. I've never played a fighter that did it as great as Mortal Kombat. Obviously, Injustice is a very close second because it's developed by the same guys, but they were very ambitious with the single player. The cinematics and the storyline that they were trying to tell was basically like a retelling of Mortal Kombat's 1, 2, 3. I didn't even know that there was a big storyline in Mortal Kombat, but obviously it's very. I don't usually used to read the dialogues of Mortal Kombat 1 and 3. It's very dialogue heavy with the beginnings and the intros and the endings, but there's a very big, like how do you call it? Big world or big environment in Mortal Kombat I didn't know about, basically highlighted by this reboot for the PlayStation and the Xbox. It's amazing. They've told the story very well. The dialogue was amazing. The story was great. So it's a bit of cheesiness here and there, but it's very intentional. Like the character of Johnny Cage is very cheesy, but intentionally cheesy at that. Everybody was given a nice, you know, given a nice attention to detail too, because you're playing from multiple character perspectives in the storyline. You're not forced to play one character. You're playing Sub-Zero here, and then eventually in chapter 8 or 9 you go to another character entirely, and you're giving multiple perspectives and a reason why these people are coming in and fighting each other. Some of them, a few of them were kind of cheesy, but the end outlook and the end result is amazing and awesome. I loved it. I loved what they were trying to do with Mortal Kombat, and I'm really hoping that there's a sequel somewhere down the road. The mythology and the mythos of the series is too cool to be overlooked for a long time. So definitely Mortal Kombat. That's the basic reason why it got into my number 7 instead of Street Fighter. The other thing is obviously the gameplays. The game There's a lot of variety in gameplay in Mortal Kombat. A lot of unlockables in Mortal Kombat. The visual aesthetics of the X-ray moves are very unique. You didn't see it. You haven't seen it in any other game before. And the multiplayer, it had 2 versus 2, so it did a lot of things to get players hooked. It even tried to grab some of the casual fans in terms of there's another, I forgot the name of the mode, but basically it's a ladder mode in the sense of like a mission mode, like eliminate 5 zombies using Johnny Cage's certain move, or try to win this fight without limbs. So it gives you like this mission mode that's really cool, kind of funny. You don't need to be a fighter expert to get to complete. And there are a couple of missions that are really hard, but some of them were very fun to play. So it had the all-around package, Mortal Kombat, and that's why I'm giving it this recommendation basically for number 7 in terms of one of the best fighters of this generation, in my opinion.